Hey, welcome back, Strike Eagle fans. Not so here. Today we're starting a part of the long-awaited air-to-ground series. This is going to be part one of a multi-part series on doing air-to-ground bombing in the Strike Eagle. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to start off by kind of laying the foundation for how the bombing works in the Strike Eagle by talking about designations. Gotten a lot of questions in Discord and other areas about how does the Strike Eagle do designation. Obviously, a lot of people are trying to use their knowledge of how the Hornet or the Viper works, and asking stuff like, hey, waypoint designation and all that. Biggest advice I can give you is try to flush as much of that out of your brain as possible, because the Strike Eagle works very differently. It's a little complicated at first when you try to wrap your brains around it, but once you understand it, it's going to make a whole lot of sense, and it's actually very easy and very intuitive to make it work. So without going into any of the bombing stuff, without understanding how the designation process works or the designation hierarchy in the Strike Eagle works, a lot of it is going to kind of be a foreign language to a lot of people. So that's what I'm going to try to do, is talk about designations, and then later on we'll talk about individual bombing type of profiles, where we're going to talk about auto releases, CDIP releases, and whatnot. But I'm just going to concentrate on the designation. So right now I'm in the Sinai map. I'm frozen. I've taken my first radar map of a target area. What we're looking for is I've got a 4-ship. I'm going to be bombing. I'm looking for a row of 8 parked Su-33s on the ramp down here in Egypt. Intel says they're out in the open. There's also 5 backfire bombers also out in the open on the ramp as transient aircraft. And then, so that's 1 and 2 are going to take those out, and then 3 and 4 are going to attack a SA-2 site just to the south of the airfield simultaneously. I'm not going to go through all the attack stuff, but I am going to set the scenario that we're going to do for all the rest of the series. So you can see I've got the first map is frozen. We're on sort of a mapping leg right now, and then the target area is right here at Kirbit Airfield. So let's go ahead and take the rest of the map. I'll go ahead and take us off pause as we fly. And I'm not going to rehash all the air-to-ground radar stuff, but what I want to do is I want to show you some of the designation process and how it's going to work. So I'll go ahead and take the map. It's going to go ahead and build. So I'm frozen right now. Let me pause one more time. So now I can start breaking out. It looks like there's my Su-33s on the ramp. Probably the backfire bombers there. That's pretty obvious. Before I do anything, I'm going to work through the designation process. So this is important. So there's 5 different types of designations that you can do in the Strike Eagle. The first one is called a nav designation, and essentially all that is you're just going to input the target point into the nav steering. And as long as you're in air-to-ground master mode, it will automatically create a designation for you. So I'll show you that right now. So target 3-point is the target. Remember, target always has the decimal after the N. But notice right now I'm in air-to-air master mode. And I just want to show you what it doesn't do if you don't go to the air-to-ground master mode. So I'm going to change over to 3-point, and notice nothing happens. The steering is to 3. And I can turn direct, so my heading to the target is 176. But because the jet says, hey, you're in air-to-air master mode, I'm not going to do anything with it yet. If I switch over to air-to-ground master mode, which I can then either press or I can HOTAS, so I'll go ahead and press over. So it remembers that you've typed in the target point, and as soon as I do that, now it's given me a designation to that point, and it's already given me steering to that point. So that's the important key there, is you have to be in air-to-ground master mode for that to work. Let me reverse that one more time. I'll go back out. I'm sorry, let me just put in steer 2. So this is just a normal steer point. And then notice if I'm just flying to a normal steer point, not a target point, I don't have any kind of designation. It's just steering. So that's the important key. And then once I'm in air-to-ground master mode, I can then just type that in. Let me switch over to the target pod real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and show you something. So when the target pod is basically just stab forward, so if I put the target point in for nav designation, it also cues the target pod to the target, and that's automatic as well. So watch this. So again, once I type in 3-point in air-to-ground master mode, obviously you already get the designation, you get all the steering, you get all the target information, so I'm a minute 54 out. And the other big thing there is it cues the target pod over, and then the key here is look at PB17 in the sensors. It doesn't show up in the radar yet because it doesn't work that way, but in the target pod, it says that I've cued to 3-point, which is the target, and the source of that designation is a nav designation. So it's really important as you QC your designations that you have the correct number, and you can also see where that designation came from. So that's really key. So that's number one. So the other way you can designate a target is with the radar, and I'll show you that here in a second. So let's go ahead and take it off freeze. We can see our go ahead and take command of the air-to-ground radar. We'll take our final map just to get a good blown up area of what we want to designate. And boom, it's frozen. Again, I'll put us on pause just for the sake of being able to do that. So now I can step through. I already have a nav designation, but I can refine that with a radar designation. And this is kind of the process that we go through from long way out. Usually using the nav designation first just to get the steering in, and then using the radar at long range, and then doing a target pod to refine it up close. So the key here is now I'm going to change from map cursor function. I'm going to toggle this over to target cursor function, and now I can slew the cursor over, and I can go ahead and designate on the center of that row. And again, what I'll do is I'll slew the target pod off on purpose, just so when I designate with the radar, you can see the pod will again snap over to that. So anytime I make a new designation or refine the designation, the target pod will always cue to that new spot. So there's a target cursor function down here at PB7, and I'll go in on the TDC as the HOTAS in the front cockpit. Kabam! So there is my designation for the radar. Again, the key there is look at PB17, make sure that I've got 3-point in there, and that I haven't screwed up the numbering. So now I have a designation, and notice now when I look at PB17 in the target pod, it still says 3-point, so it's important that we haven't dorked that up with putting the wrong point in. But now you can see that the source of that designation is now from the radar versus the nav designation. So that's another big key. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'll go ahead and switch over to the, let me go ahead and come off freeze here. Once I'm done with the radar, I'll go back over to the air-to-air radar, and now I'm going to concentrate in the targeting pod. I'll go ahead and pick up the steering. Going to check my packs while I'm a little ways out here. So I've got 12 CBU-87s. We're going to drop a stick of cluster bombs on that row of Su-33s and hopefully obliterate those guys. So I've got all my stuff set up. If you guys watched the packs part 3, I talked about how to set up the CBU-87s. I've got a good packs ready light. Master arm is hot, so that's all looking good. So what I'm going to do now is I'll go ahead and center up on the steering. And I could release this as an auto release from here and pretty much be done because the radar is a good source of designation. But what I really want to do is I want to refine that with the target pod, because the target pod is always going to be the better source of accuracy. Okay, so I'm still 7 miles out. Sorry, bumped that up one too many times. Let me take command of the target pod. I'll go ahead and zoom in. So yep, I can definitely see my Su-33s lined up on the ramp. Nice juicy targets. I've got my backfires over there. My number 2 is going to hit. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and designate on the row. I'm going to go ahead and pick the first one because I'm going to drop the string down the row and hopefully get all the weapons across that whole row. So now once I'm in range, I'll go ahead and fire the laser. Obviously I'm on pause right now just for the purpose of being able to talk. Again, what I want to be sure is that I've got targets set down here at PB7 in the cursor function. It's the exact same thing in the radar to make sure that I'm going to actually take the designation. And then I'm going to go ahead and fire. Notice I've got laser ranging in feet here. If I turn the laser off, it goes to slant range in nautical miles. So that laser ranging tells me I've got good laser returns. Whoops, bumped it a little bit. So there's good designation. All is looking good. And then again, I can drop with good accuracy on this target and go in. So the three designations I talked about was a nav designation, the radar designation, and the target pod designation. The next two are HUD designations, and I can take a HUD auto des, or I can take a CCIP des, which is using the CCIP pipper. So what I'll do now is I will pretend that we've come into this target blind, and we're looking around on the airfield. This is more of a target of opportunity sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and flush that designation. So the way I do that is boat switch aft in the front cockpit. I'll remove the designation. So now I have nothing. And what I'm going to do is I will take command of the HUD by going castle switch in and then castle switch forward. Notice now I'm in command of the HUD. And if I would do it again, I will now cue the target pod up here to the air-to-ground reticle, which is really important because now I can get the target pod to the HUD. So let me do it one more time. And now you can see the target pod is now looking through the reticle in the HUD. Okay, so I've reset everything back to the way we started because I want to go over this one more time because it's important to understand how the HUD designations work. Because this is a really key feature of the Strike Eagle, being able to use the HUD for designation. So again, we'll do the HUD auto pipper designation. So the way you do this again is to, first thing you want to do is make sure you undesignate. So aft on that boat switch, designation's now gone. And the way we know that is because it says nav instead of target right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take command of the HUD. So press and release and then forward on the castle switch, press and release and forward. I'm in command, and if I do it twice, so the key here is to get the, it's not required, but the key is to get the target pod up to the reticle. So you do take command again, so press and release and forward again. And now notice the target pod line of sight box is now keyed to the HUD reticle, and it says SP reticle because it's undesignated, and the source of the designation or the source of what the target pod is looking at is the reticle, even though you're undesignated. So again, that's what it's important to look at PB17 to see what the status is of the pod. So what I'll do now is I'll take it off pause. We'll roll in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the flight path marker onto whatever I want to designate, and I'm going to press in and release on the pickle button. So this is the key: is you can press and release the pickle button just to get a designation. Or you can press and hold if you want to do it both a designation and then subsequently release right after that if you're in the correct parameters. In this case, I'm just going to press and release to get the designation with the pickle button. So let's take it off pause. I'll roll in. I'm going to now start looking for my Su-33s down on the ramp, probably about right here along this ramp right here. Bunk. That's in on the TDC. I'm sorry, in on the pickle button. I'm going to put it on pause again, and now you see so I now have a designation that came from the flight path marker, which is in the center of the air-to-ground reticle. And as soon as you designate, just like we talked about before, the pod now snaps to the diamond, and now the difference is you can see where it says SP HUD because it's designated, but it doesn't have a specific steer point number associated with it because I undesignated, and now we do it through the HUD, which means that it is a kind of a free agent designation. It's not associated to any particular steer point. Again, you can also see that the target pod cues over there. So the way this would normally work, let's say I was going to do laser guided bombs, and I saw target of opportunity, so I'd roll in, put the flight path marker center of the reticle on the point down there, TDC in. I'm sorry, I keep saying TDC, but I mean pickle button in. And then that'll get you a pretty close designation. You don't have to be exactly perfect. And then what you want to do is usually your wizard will then take command of the target pod. I'll do it myself. So take command of the target pod, and then you'll just slew over and then refine the designation from that point on. And then that way you can get laser on and then make the designation even better. And then you can, I'll take it off pause. You can then fly the ASL, hold the pickle button down and come up the ASL line and release. Or in another scenario, let's say that I wanted to do an auto release because I've got CBU-87s or whatever. Either way works fine. You can do an auto or a CDIP, but that was a an explanation of how I did the auto. Okay, so that was the first 4 designations. So we did the nav, radar, target pod, and now we did the auto pipper des. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to undesignate again, and I'm going to go into CDIP, go ahead and turn the laser off. And you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either go into the packs and go into the air-to-ground packs, and now you can basically change this from auto to CDIP, basically set everything back up again. Or if I leave it in auto, there's an even easier way to do it through the HOTAS, and I'll go back over to the target pod. So if you go, as long as you're in command of the HUD, so I'm not in command right now, so I'll go ahead and take command again. So I'm in command, and as long as I'm in command, I can go aft on the auto-act switch, and that automatically gets you into CDIP. And if I toggle that back, auto-act aft, I can go from auto to CDIP, auto, CDIP, and so on. So again, a very powerful way that you can flip between different modes without ever having to go down into the heads down display. So it's all very, once you learn the HOTAS, it's all very easy and intuitive to make that work. So now notice right now is I'm undesignated. So now if you remember I said auto pipper designation only works with an undesignated target. CDIP will work either way. So you can have a designated target. So I'll do this. I'll go ahead and designate that again with the pod. So I can roll in and I can be in command of the HUD. I don't have to be in command, but I just did it anyway. So I can roll in, and what I want to do is I want to fly this is called the DIL, the displayed impact line. I want to fly that line right through the target, and then when the pipper actually reaches the target, press in and hold on the TDC. I keep saying TDC. Press in and hold on the pickle button, and then the bombs will come off. And again, if I've got multiple weapons, I want to make sure that I hold that pickle button down until the reticle flashes. That tells me that all the bombs are gone. Or I can be undesignated, and it'll work either way. Now, the really important thing that I'm going to demonstrate here is that the CDIP pipper itself will actually create the designation. So whether I have a designation already or I'm undesignated, whenever I pickle with the pickle button, wherever that TDC is at that moment on the ground, that's where it's going to actually place that diamond. So if I've already got a diamond, it'll move it to wherever the pipper is. If I don't have a diamond, because I'm undesignated, it'll create a designation at that spot. So that's your 5th form of designation, is the CDIP will actually create the designation. So if I want to do multiple passes and I come back around, the beauty is that designation will still be there on the old spot or on the spot that you just dropped on. So now I've got good steering and all that. So I'll go ahead and do that as an undesignated drop. And what I want to show you is the target pod again works exactly the same way as it did before, where I can take command twice, and now the target pod will now queue to the CDIP pipper, and as soon as I pickle and create a designation, the target pod will then snap and stay on the diamond as I pull up and away. So you'll see that, and you'll see the target pod will kind of drift along the ground because it's latched to the CDIP pipper, and I'll go ahead and do that. So we're a little shallow right now, so I'll go ahead and pitch over. I want to make sure that I don't get below my 1,200 feet for the release for the CBU. Looks like everything's looking good. I can see that row of Su-33s on the ramp. And as soon as I get the pipper right there, notice there's a designation. I hold the pickle button down until the reticle's gone. I do my safe escape. There goes my bombs. Boom, 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 boom. Kabourgeois, a bunch of dead Su-34s. So that was how you do the final designation through the HUD. And again, I want to show you this. We're masked because the target pod is behind us. But notice that it also shows SP HUD because we did an undesignated release in with the CDIP pipper. And the source of that designation came through the HUD, which again was the CDIP pipper itself. So hopefully that made a lot of sense. I know it was a bit fast and furious, but hopefully this laid the foundation for the way that the bombing system is going to work in the Strike Eagle. I'm not going to get into all the HAT designation hierarchy, the height above target, much to the chagrin of some of the guys in Discord who want to get into the details of that. I'm just not going to go there because it's not worth the time to get into that level of detail. But remember the 5 designation sources: nav, radar, target pod, and then the 2 HUD designations either through the auto pipper or through the seated pipper. They do all the same thing. They basically just tell the jet, this is the spot on the ground that I want you to compute all your bombing solutions to that point. And that is all the designation is a discrete point on the ground that the jet will then do all the bombing calculations to. And again, that only works in air-to-ground master mode. All right, so that's Fast and Furious, not so out. We'll pick it back up with the rest in the series of the air-to-ground bombing. Hope that made sense. And as always, hit me up on Discord, and I'll be happy to answer you guys' questions. Not so out. Take care.